邪魔をしないでくれ。
私は騎士のショベルナイト。
Oh, okay. I guess we're doing this. Blade Strangers is a game I've known about ever since its release, because guess why? And I honestly haven't played it that much. Last time I did, it was kind of okay, I guess. Although, to be fair, I've never really dived super far into it and haven't even brought it out almost at all, besides forcing friends to play it for the sake of comedy. So the data's a little flawed, to put it lightly. But it can't be too bad, right? Might even be a hidden gem once you put the time into it. Blade Strangers was developed by a studio I'm not even going to try, and published by Nicholas. I'm not going to go into them as a publisher for the sake of staying on topic, and because I do not know enough about the situation to go on a rant. The game was released in 2018 for pretty much everything at the time, and was forgotten about soon afterwards. Outside of an update a year later adding a few characters and game balance. In the graphics department, this game kinda just looks like store-brand Guilty Gear Xrd. At least I think Xrd is what they were going for. I mean, it looks fun, I guess. The sprite work is blatantly based off 3D models, KOF 13 style, but they represent the models so closely without adding any sort of art style that I have to question why they didn't just keep the models like Xrd does. Note, I'm not expecting Xrd level quality from this, but something about it just feels cheap, especially the way things move. Like, there's some sort of choppiness to it. That's the only way I can describe it. But overall, it works for what it is, I guess, so we can't go too hard on it. The soundtrack is also pretty hit or miss. It is just forgettable besides a few tracks, like Lina's and Noko's themes, which are pretty good, but I wouldn't call them anything special. I was originally going to criticize the sound design as a whole, but looking over the footage, it really is mainly the music. Well, besides the voice acting, which is pretty bad all around. I mean, sometimes you get gems like hilariously miscast Shovel Knight, and other times you get, well, Gunvolt. I get that it's not the original guy, but could he sound any less enthused? Like, did he forget his coffee? Is he getting held by gunpoint or something? Like, this is what he sounds like. Oversurge, Azure Striker. For context, here's what it sounds like in Blade Strangers. And here's what an actual Astrosphere sounds like. Okay, graphics aren't everything unless you're Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and quite frankly, I don't care that much about them. How does this thing actually play? Well, heading into the pretty shit tutorial, we can find out! Blade Strangers is a 4-button fighting game, with those buttons being light, heavy, special, and unique. I'm not sure why the last button's called unique, considering it does the same thing for every character, just being the universal anti-air, blowback, and high-low mix-up button. The light attack button also has a 3-hit auto combo tied to it, meaning on contact, if you press the light button again, it'll go into another move up to the 3rd total press of the button. I'm not the biggest fan of this, and quite frankly I'd rather just have the ability to jab multiple times, but it is what it is. There are also Gatling style combos in this game. Sort of. The order goes light, heavy, unique, or special. You heard me right, you can only get one or the other at the end of your chain. You also can't do one heavy attack into a different heavy attack. The system is oddly restrictive like that, and I don't quite understand why. If they were trying to stop infinites and shit like that, there isn't a need because of the combo gauge that goes out on every hit and will instantly end the combo when it hits empty. Now, complex combos still exist in this game. They kinda just feel like strive to me though, in that I feel like I'm working against the system whenever I do them. But the thing is, the only real changes I'd make is allow you to do, say, heavy into back or forward heavy, and maybe allow a special after a unique. That's really all I changed. Note, a lot of this is preference, and for what it is, it gets the job done. I think things were done this way to emphasize the offensive skill system, which is a move similar to Guilty Gear's Roman Cancel, that allows you to spend a bar of your super meter by pressing light and unique together to launch a special attack that can be done out of any other move to allow those more complex combos I mentioned earlier. Of course, there is also a defensive skill as well that lets you spend a bar by doing the same button input to blow the opponent back while you're blocking. These two abilities leads this game to be pretty meter hungry overall. Grabs are performed by pressing light and heavy together and are your standard grabs, not much to say. Special moves, however, I have quite a lot to say about because they run on simple inputs. For those who are unaware, simple inputs just means that instead of quarter circles in the works, special moves are done by pressing a button in a direction. I actually don't hate these as much as other people do, as my main complaint with them is they heavily limit the number of moves a character can have, and lack the satisfaction of pulling them off that motion and charge inputs have. Also, one-button reversals are scary, but Blade Strangers, as far as these go, are okay, as they get around the lack of moves relatively well by using multi-button inputs for different strengths, with strong plus special doing a stronger version, with special plus unique doing a way stronger than average version that requires 50% of a bar or super meter. It's not the best system ever, but once again, as I've said way too many times at this point, it gets the job done. Of course, don't worry, your big flashy super moves exist in the game, with you being able to access them by pressing special, heavy, and unique together. If you want the level 2 version of the move, press the buttons again immediately. Some characters have more than one move, and the second one is usually done by holding down as well. The last attack in your arsenal is the get up attack. When you're knocked down, you can press the attack button to do a get off me move. I actually kinda hate this due to it messing with me when I'm trying to get up without doing it. But that's probably a skill issue more than anything else. Oh right, you have heat up mode. I legitimately keep forgetting about it. When at low health while having a bar of meter, you can activate it by pressing light plus special plus heavy, and while active you need to be hit twice in a combo in order to flinch, and enhanced special moves cost less meter to use. Alright, with the basics covered, we can finally, play the game. The first thing I did with each character I played in a roster I can't really judge since I only really know the obvious characters in Gunvolt, is screw around in mission mode, which wasn't the greatest as far as I could tell. With only 5 trials per character, and this was really the part where the awkwardness in combos showed up the most. They also, for some reason, didn't learn from Marvel 3 and forgot to put demonstrations for how to do the combos to help the player figure out any awkward timings. But I was able to get them done in a reasonable amount of time before heading right into story mode, in which our tale begins with a quote from a guy I've never heard of, and quite frankly I'm too lazy to look up whether he's real or fictional. Which then proceeds to go into the start of a space documentary or a kids movie involving friendly aliens. Probably would have some sort of narration going like, "Space, its endless mysteries never cease to amaze," or some garbage like that. Meet the modes. They govern reality or something. Based off the way this story goes, I'm shocked it's still functioning. Anyways, something has been destroying worlds left and right! And the last Blade Stranger, Protectors in the Multiverse or something, has fallen. In a desperate gambit, the modes summon fighters from various worlds to find out who will be the next Blade Stranger. How are we going to get them fighting? Simple, we'll edit a couple config files and make them think they're in a world tournament. Part of me feels like they should try to get them all to awaken instead of one of them, but I don't make the rules here. The rest of the story is just the characters running into each other and fighting. The writing is pretty poor overall. The characters seem to be flanderized to high heaven. One of the things a crossover needs to get right for me is making me care about the series represented, and this just fails miserably. It also really doesn't help that the conversations are extremely short, so even what personality is shown from the characters doesn't get much time to shine. The modes chiming in was somewhat amusing and admittedly having a couple decent moments, but most of it was just uninteresting. There's also a few times where you can tell the budget just wasn't here, as there's actually a random encounter thrown in at one point in each story, and the more obvious thing of when two characters interact in different stories, the exact same conversation happens, unlike in most games where they'd at least change it slightly. But considering these are almost fully voiced, I'm assuming it was a compromise that had to be done. Actually playing through the fights now also reveals a few issues I had with the game. I'll start with the admittedly extremely personal one. The game, due to the light auto combos and awkward combos, feels very mashy. This is definitely a me thing, but this combined with the relatively weak hit feedback, at least for me, doesn't feel the greatest. But the bigger annoyance is the pacing. The characters almost feel slightly slower than they should. Way better than when the game launched, mind you, where movement speed was half of what it is now. But at the same time, there's also the issue of I'm not sure how I'm supposed to play this. Is this meant to be played more like a Street Fighter-esque game where slower movement makes more sense? Or is this trying to be a more fast-paced anime game? I think this definitely comes from the roster more than anything else, with the cast having such a vastly different set of powers to each other that it honestly feels like the characters are playing different games. Oh right, I was talking the story. Right as the tournament ends, the threat to the multiverse finds the moats and our heroes, and that threat is... Bargain Bin New 13. Interesting, I guess. Of course, there's just no way we can win, since we haven't awakened yet, and when all seems lost, this goddess lady shows up. I have no fucking clue who this is, and has the player character remember someone important to them, which completes the process, and the relatively easy final battle commences. Lina's not really that difficult of a fighting game boss. I don't even think she gets any boss powers. Honestly, the most irritating thing to deal with is the voice. Like, seriously, what is it with Japan and this obnoxiously screechy voice? Lina is defeated and the multiverse is saved. Well, that was something, I guess. I played 3 stories that were practically identical before I was ready to call it, before I went, you know what? Quote can't talk. This might be entertaining. And that's why I discovered there's a little more to this plot. The second to bottom row here, which were actually originally unlockable stories in the original release of the game, have slightly different plots to the rest of the characters. These stories, besides Lina's, starts off right where the last story ends, with Solange winning and Lina showing up. While the goddess lady is busy dealing with Lina, the moats decide to enact a plan B. You see, the oldest moat has found more Blade Strangers. Apparently due to the fact that he's running MS-DOS, they took till now to show up. And thus, the moats have the stranger fight various fighters from the normal story to prep them, and as expected, Strippercess over here gets her ass kicked, with the player character coming in clutch to save the day. I kinda like this as it's a nice little way to show respect towards the guest characters, and Lina's story is somehow extremely satisfying and disappointing at the same time, as it's probably the most different with you playing as the bad girl and all. She has this weird halo thing she uses for attacks and stuff called Davian that she talks to. Most of it is the moats just throwing every character they have lying around at her to buy time for the goddess lady, with Lina tearing through them. After defeating Solange and devouring everyone, Lina explodes or something from overeating and the universe reboots so hard it restarts the game. Which actually caught me off guard as I was half expecting Lina to lose like every other time. Kind of explains nothing about who Lina is besides some world-destroying monster, which we, already knew. But the ending caught me so off guard that it skyrocketed to being one of the better stories almost instantly. To end off my time in the story mode, I decided to do my 7th and final playthrough, as at that point I felt like I'd seen everything worth seeing, as the character from the series I know the best, Gunvolt. I also cranked up the difficulty from normal to expert because I actually have a comprehension of how Gunvolt plays because he's who I used to play when I first played this game all those years ago. And to end things off with a bang, and a bang it was. I always like to crank things up after a while just to see what things are like on a higher setting, as it's closer to what an actual game against a person is. Mind you, it's obviously not exact, but it helps me get a baseline of at least what the game is supposed to be like. Or, bare minimum, breaks the inevitable boredom of normal mode below being easy. And with this game, it was no different. I also got a nice surprise in the form of there being more story than average for a bottom row character. Although this is most likely due to the J-pop fairy living inside Gunvolt's head. Don't worry about it. Although the apparent budget strikes again, as a lot of lines are randomly not voiced. I haven't really talked about this, and I don't know how often I'll talk about it in this series of reviews, but the balance in this game seems a little whack. Even a more casual player like myself can tell that Gunvolt's a little on the really friggin' good side. Like, I've done some digging for online content for this game for the sake of this video, and remember how I compared this game slightly to Strive, because that's what it seems like most characters are playing, sort of? But then you have Gunvolt in the corner here playing Exert Rev 2 with his meter neutral 20 hit plus combos using 2 plus EX moves. What absolute madman thought it was a good idea to give a character the ability to generate meter with a special in a super meter hungry game? Not to mention, he's one of the few characters with actually good air mobility. It's crazy! And this run was pretty fun, partly because of it. The AI made me question if jumping is good at all in this game due to really high reaching anti-airs, but that's probably due to me needing to break some habits more than anything else. And this run really did put into perspective how mashy I get when I have auto combos, or just how bad I've gotten in the mashiness department in general. Alright, we've beaten the 6 stages, time to kick Luna's ass one final time.
Oversurge as your striker! Voltaic Chase!
I know I was pretty negative during this review, but I actually enjoyed my time with the game a decent amount. It's far from a bad fighting game, but I don't know how good I should consider it. I guess I'd say it's pretty decent and worth at least considering giving a look. Apparently it goes on sale fairly often, so hey, if you want to play as Swole Shovel Knight, go for it. Just note, if you're planning to play online, make sure you have a friend, since the odds of finding anyone on a niche delay-based game like this is pretty low. The single player offerings, as expected, are pretty mediocre unfortunately, but the gameplay itself, despite everything, is pretty enjoyable. Now, does it hold a candle to the best in the genre? No, but with a little tweaking, I think this could be something pretty good. If anything, I've gained a lot more respect for it after playing it and watching a few tournaments. Makes me want to dig into a bunch of the other B-list fighting games I own to see how they hold up. Anyways, that's enough out of me. Have a nice whatever time of day it is, and I'll see you next time.